Hello, Internet! Today we're going to be starting Asteroids VR. If you're saying we've already started Asteroids VR like a year ago, and then like 2.5 years ago, you're right. Um, this has been a project that has kind of come back around again and again, and it's something that I've kind of struggled to ever finish. We've made some fun things with like locomotion or creating an asteroid belt and things like that, and then nothing else. And I think part of the problem has been just the way of project managing this entire project because it's a big thing. We're making a game, a VR game, and that's a lot of work, even for just like a more or less building asteroids, like the classic Atari game, in a VR setting with some new spins. So what we're going to try with this, it's a totally new project. I deleted everything and took out the VR stuff. Ignore the packages, but it's all gone. I have all the code. I have all of that for more reference. But what I want to start is we are going to build the game from scratch, from nothing, and we're going to do it in a really iterative fashion. And we're not really going to focus on the VR stuff until the rest of the game is working. I think that just makes way more sense because once we start adding VR stuff, it got really hard to test and really hard to iterate on things because it meant that I needed VR to be up and running, and whenever that wasn't working, or just whenever I didn't have the time or the space or whatever, it just wasn't a great way to develop. And so ideally I want something that doesn't have that requirement. And so the plan is to start with asteroids and just get that working and get all the mechanics for that done. And then we can move forward, and hopefully that makes everything go smoother. Hopefully we can actually build the project and kind of move it forward, because I feel like it's stalled out a few times, and I don't want that to keep happening. So hopefully this can be sort of a recurring thing that we try to make more progress on, maybe do some streams or something, and kind of get a laid back approach to actually building like a full game. I think it'll let us explore a lot more opportunities and things that we haven't really gotten into in the past. So that's the plan. Long introduction, but that's sort of where we're going. And I think with this, it's something that's kind of petered out in the past. So we'll see what happens. But today I want to get asteroids working, and I don't mean like full asteroid physics and everything. I'm focusing on destruction. I want to be able to have them have health and disappear, and then we can add on to that as it goes. And so there's really two things that I think we need to make this work. One is going to be something that tracks health, and the other is going to be something that reacts to changes in health. I think I'm going to rely very heavily on events and stuff in this approach. I don't know if that's a good idea, but I'm kind of just guessing here. So we're going to call this create an asteroids folder. We can move these scripts around, I guess, so we don't really need to set up a big hierarchy or anything like that. Let's do interactables. Let's not try to overcomplicate this. Let's make a health tracked object. Health tracking component. There we go. And so this is going to have a single attribute to it. It's just going to track the health. So there we go. So we want to track our health. The idea here is it's going to have some public health. We can add on to this later. And then whenever this health changes, we want to publish an update. And so we can't really do that if we're just using this as this. Like I can create this and it will work, and we're pretty much done. But it's not really what I want, because if I'm changing that health, the only way to check that something has happened is to check every frame that the health has either updated or not. And I'm not sure that makes sense. I suppose it could, but it's not. That's just not the way the programmatic way that I want to take it. So let's create a cube. Everything I think at the start is just going to be a cube, mostly because when things get destroyed, I want them to spawn more asteroids, smaller ones. And that's really easy with a cube because you can just spawn 8 and it'll fit in the cube if you just cut everything in half. So I think that makes sense. We can go super complex with those, maybe bring back our voxel stuff and do that. But for now, we're just going to go with cubes because simple stuff. We're probably going to get to art like way later. That's not really a priority right now. And it's been something that once I get done has kind of slowed things down as well, because you get the art stuff working, and then it kind of boxes you into certain other design decisions. So let's ignore that as well and just do this. We need to make that public because otherwise we're not going to see it. There we go. Public float health. Cool. And so this should compile and everything should be good. Problem is, again, I can change this and nobody's going to see the updates for that. And so what I want to do is switch up to a new version of C#. Not there. Preferences, project settings? That's not right either. Is it? Oh, yes it is. Okay. And so Unity ships with 2 different versions of C# at this point. One is the old like C# 3 or .NET 3. The other one is .NET 4 something, 4.7, 4.6, some version we're going to get there eventually. This one. No? Hold on. What? Can I not? Okay, maybe not. There we go. I was looking in the wrong place. Okay. API compatibility level and the scripting runtime version are totally different. We don't want 3.5. We want 4.x. That's going to restart Unity, it looks like. Sure, we'll save that. And what this is going to do is bring in some new functions. It will allow us to do like async await operations and a few other fun new C# syntaxes that are just nice things to have, but also open up some nicer patterns that we're going to want to take advantage of. And 3.5 is being deprecated in the first place. So this just makes it nicer. And it means that if we want to pull in new libraries, those libraries are probably going to be compiled against .NET 4 and not .NET 3. And so if we want to use those, then everything just gets easier. So that's the general idea there. For this, we've kind of talked about how the health thing works. What we can do with the new one is say turn this into a getter. And so this arrow symbol is a new thing. It creates a property that is going to provide us with some sort of health. And so this is a get-only property. So it's like a read-only property that's going to return some value. In this case, we want to return health, but we don't have any health. So we need some sort of private float health. Don't know if I like the underscore. And so effectively what this syntax is doing here is we're declaring a public property, which a property in C# is something that has a getter and a setter theoretically, but those getters and setters can have different access levels and may not even exist. In this case, the arrow operator is creating something that looks more or less like this. I'm going to use capitals because I guess that's what we're doing. But effectively what it's doing is a shorthand for that, which is public return or public float health with a getter and the return and all that other fun stuff. This just truncates it down a bunch, so everything just gets easier. Let's turn on our screencast mode, and now you can see what I typed. Cool. So private float health, cool. That's just going to store our health. The public float health is going to return that. And then we need something that can actually deal damage. So some sort of public. We don't need to return anything, do we? I don't think there's any advantage to returning any values for our health, like damage. Void. set, and we'll just take a float of health. And then this dot health equals our health. I don't normally recommend having underscores in your name, but we're going to do that for now, just because it makes them line up really nicely, and we can change that pretty quickly in other things. Why does it want me to sign in? Is it going to get mad if I close that? The licensing might not like that, but we're going to try. So now that we've updated the C# thing, I probably didn't need to do that, but it should fix everything. And you can see we lost our health. Part of the problem by making this a property is Unity no longer knows what that is. It doesn't understand it. And so I think you can serialize private fields and make Unity actually understand them. That isn't traditionally done, but my understanding is if you do that, it comes back. And so serialized field is effectively telling Unity, save this field. It's marking it as something that should be serialized, which is to be like written into a file or written into some data format that can be read back out. Traditionally, private things are just ignored because they're private, and you don't usually want them. In this case, we do, because what doing that allows us to do is set the default health to say 100, and we can do that. And I think we can change it back as well. The only caveat with this is if we can change it at runtime, like sliding it this way is not going to trigger a property because we're not modifying the property here. We're modifying our field, which isn't going to trigger anything. So some tricks there. But that should publish our health so we can actually modify it. You'll note the underscore was dropped because Unity is somewhat smart. And so, yeah. Now, going to make some functions just so we have like some basic stuff. Really, the only thing we need is a set, actually. We can do all the other math later as we need it. Set is all we need, and it's just going to set the health. The thing is we can do that easier. We can just add a setter. It's a property. We can just make it a setter. And that's probably where we're going to end up going. So instead of this, we are going to go back to this classic function for properties that looks like that. And we're going to add a setter. And so if the health changes, if I don't want to fire this event if you're not changing the value. And so the easy way to do that is to just compare it to the current value. So if our health is not equal to the value, then we want our health to be equal to the value. So if it's not the same, then set it to be the same. This isn't doing anything different, but we want to fire on health change. And we want to notify that the health has changed. I'm going to put this below, just so that we know that the health has changed, and when you receive this event, the health will have already changed. That's sort of the idea there. Now that we've added a setter, we can get rid of that set. It's not really needed anymore. We just need that function to exist. We can keep it private. We're only really going to want to fire that off from inside this class. This class is what's alerting everybody else. The thing we're going to use to actually track that is going to be a Unity event. That's not right. Using Unity engine dot events. Sure. What's the name of there it is. Why wasn't it there? Cool. So we're going to make a public Unity event. This will be on health change. And so this event is going to be represented in Unity, and it's going to represent when health changes, invoke this function for everything that's subscribed to it. And so it's sort of like a publish subscribe thing. Sort of like saying, call me when this happens. And so hopefully by doing that, it makes it really easy for things that care about other things to let that object know that they want to be notified when that's going to happen. And so hopefully this opens up some fun things, like we can have objects that would be destroyed within some sort of radius, subscribe when they're in that radius so that when they would be destroyed, that other effect happens. And we can kind of chain those together, hopefully. That's sort of the vision that I have. I said I was going small, but it's sounding more complicated, but we only have like 20 lines of code. So anyway, getting sidetracked. On health change, the way we invoke these is sort of like this. There's an invoke function on events. You shouldn't actually need that. Instead, you can just call it like this and do on health change, and we'll just publish this. Is that what we want? Do I want to publish our current object? We need to publish some sort of GameObject as part of this. Let's publish the health tracking component instead. And so on health change can't be used like a method. Okay, they don't work like C# events. Invoke is going to invoke the function. So what this does, effectively think of an event like a list of other functions. And when you call invoke with a specific parameter, it is going to go to that event and send that message to each function in that list with the arguments you give it, and effectively invoke all of them. And so this way we're providing our health tracker to every object that's subscribed so they can do other things with this, whether that's modify the health more. Maybe there's some modifier that like doubles the damage or something. We might be able to work that in somehow. But this is sort of a preliminary thing. We don't really care about all of those because we don't have them. And trying to design them in right now doesn't really make any sense because we don't know what they are. Or even like what they might be. And so without that, we can't really tell. So this should, if I did all of this right, get us to the point where when the health changes, we will get some sort of event that is notifying us that it changed. And so hopefully we can actually try that. In order to test that, I'm going to throw one other function together that is going to kind of modify this health. And the way we're going to do that is say a health modifier. And so this is I'm gonna kind of create this loop just as sort of a way to test this. And the idea is this health modifier is going to also have a health, public float health, and it is going to try to change the health of the health tracking component to be equal to this health value. And we should, when we get a function from that, it's going to also subscribe to that and say when this event or when this health changes, print this out as a debug statement. And so just kind of do that in a loop. And so we need two things. One, I need my private health tracking component. So this is just going to be our component. Cool. Why doesn't it like that? Type namespace could not be found. That doesn't sound right. I'm sure it's fine. All right, so we're going to pretend like that error doesn't exist. And then do component, get component of type health tracking component. I think this is getting a little bit broken because I restarted Unity and it might have gotten disconnected when we created that new project file because this was opened with the previous one. That's my assumption. I would assume we can restart Visual Studio Code and we'll get everything working again. I just haven't. So component, and then we want to do component dot health equals this dot health. And effectively we're just using the setter and assigning it. The cool thing with properties is you can use them like variables, so yeah, that's all we have to do. And so that will handle the update, but in the start I also want to attach something to that and do on health change. We'll do just plus equals O and E. I don't know how Unity events work, so we're gonna guess. Usually with events, you have an owner, like whoever owns the event, and then the arguments of the event. Unity, I think, does something a little bit different, so this might not work, but we're going to try it. And do debug log E. And so if I am correct, we are logging that. So I need the health out of that. Theoretically, that will probably error. Yeah. Wow, that compiled way faster. The error is it's expecting a... Oh, semicolon. Well, that makes way more sense. Plus equal cannot be applied to operands of type Unity event and a lambda expression. Okay, we can't do that. Well, one sec. I don't know how to use add listener. I don't want to. Oh, do I have to? The Unity action. So can I just swap that in? I think I can. Yeah. Okay. So Unity has their own like action thing. We have to do add listener. The overloads for events don't seem to work. Traditionally with like delegates in C#, you can just plus equals to them with a lambda that takes this object and then, or like the sender and the argument, and it will just work. In this case, we have to call add listener and provide the object we're going to send, E, and that is just going to be our health tracking component. That's going to be this right there. And so this E is this in that statement. And so we can get the health out of that every time it changes and debug that. That's how that whole loop is going. And so as we change the health modifier's health, it should modify our health tracking component, which should then alert the health modifier that it changed. And so if we do that all, theoretically, I need to attach the component. That's going to be key, because otherwise this really isn't going to work. There we go. So health, we'll set them both to be equal, which means when I start this, we shouldn't see anything change. Object reference not set to instance of a component. What? This get component. That doesn't seem right. We're gonna pretend like that worked and try again. Because there's no... What? Yeah. That should be fine. Or not. Huh. Object reference not set to an instance of an object. So fire on health change. Is that what's going on? Are we not initializing our event? That might be the problem. So here, we create this Unity event. I may need to do a new Unity event. Question mark? This doesn't seem right. I've never had to do this before. Health tracking component. Yeah, I didn't think that felt right. Unity event dot... Why? I shouldn't need to create this. Do we have a compiler? Is that what's going on? Doesn't look like it, but I think we do, because I should see, unless, let's change this to be a float, or a game object rather. Let's do a float, and that'll be this dot health. So we're going to send the health, and we're not going to send the entire object, because that's all that's stored here. So it's just effectively a wrapper around that with some added functionality. So we're just going to send the actual health value. I think that should cause it to show up as an event here. Or float doesn't. Oh, there we go. I was using e.health. That doesn't work anymore because we we drilled down even deeper. So hopefully that goes away, and we don't see anything there. That's concerning. I feel like I've broken Unity events, and I didn't even really do anything. I'm going to go and figure out why that's happening, because it shouldn't be it shouldn't be doing this, and I don't know why exactly. Unity engine dot events dot Unity event, a zero argument persistent callback that can be saved with the scene. Let's drill into this and figure out what's going on. Unity base events, that's not the right one. Let's go into this, which accepts a single generic. Invokes Unity base event. That seems right. Huh. I don't know. I'm gonna go look up how to use a Unity event, apparently, because I guess that isn't how you do it. Because you can't initialize these unless you use Unity base event or event base. Yeah, no, that doesn't work either. So there's some way that this is supposed to get constructed. Traditionally, unless I'm missing something, it would be added to Unity automatically when you made it public. Unity would automatically initialize it. That isn't happening, and I don't know why. So I need to figure that out. Well, this is how they're doing it, and it's not great. It kind of is gross, but we're gonna go with this. And so what they're doing is creating a new abstraction over the Unity event, like this, which is fun. Unity float event, which extends Unity event float. Was that it? Yeah. And they add a serializable to it to make the thing serialize, so it's actually saved. You don't need any references to it. Cool. I don't need that. And then replacing their Unity event with that. And then in the start, so public or void start blah, if on health change is null, then on health change equals a new Unity float event, and creating their event like that. This way we get a constructor because we're not using the abstract class anymore, so we can actually build it because we have a concrete implementation of our own empty class on top of it. Great. And so that should do everything like that. And now we shouldn't have null errors, theoretically. Sure, yeah. Yeah, we are actually getting something there. I don't see it get added when we start. I wasn't sure if that would work or not. Like if in the inspector you'd be able to see dynamically assigned or whatever event handlers. That didn't seem to happen, but we should still be able to modify this and see things pop up in the console here. So as this goes up, we can see we get these console messages that things are changing, which is good. That's what we want. We get 2 more because I typed 20, and so we get an update for 2, and then an update for 20, which means that things are theoretically working. We're actually getting these updates, and so theoretically we can actually respond to them. So we're gonna have to figure out some way to make this more fun, because I don't particularly like that. We might be able to do something like this, which will be like concrete Unity event of type T, and Unity event T, cool. We'll do concrete event T, plug in a float, and plug in a float for those. And now we have a we have a public class that's going to serialize these things, but it has a generic type. So theoretically, it should still work. It doesn't though. We lost our inspector stuff. So that didn't solve our problem, but it might. No, completely null. So you can't actually do that. Okay, well that's fun. Learning new things about Unity events. Right. So that's something that I'll need to figure out what to do with, because I don't really like these just kind of sitting around. I don't want that to happen. And before I fall over, was completely missing where I was standing. Anyway, before I fall over and before we get lost in this, that's pretty much where I wanted to get, is a way to, or sort of a proof of concept of this event-based thing. For health, it's kind of useful. For other things, I think it's going to be very useful for like picking up objects or interacting with objects. There's a lot of use to this because you don't necessarily need to maintain state in every object. You just need sort of these events and what happens because of those. And so we don't necessarily need to have every object tracking every other object. We just care about the interactions between them. And so I'm feeling like this pattern will work, but I don't know. That's sort of what the point of this whole thing is to kind of explore these at a small scale before we have like a big game with VR attached to it and massive amounts of physics and other corners we're going to have to cut to get this to work. And hopefully this also makes it really easy to test. That's another motivation here. So we'll see. If you have other ideas or you think this is silly, let me know, because I don't know what I'm doing. And it seems like a good idea, but I don't know if it is. And so if you think this won't work, or you've done it before and they're like, stop, or yes, then let me know, because I'm kind of curious how this will go. So hopefully you guys will enjoy this. I imagine we'll do more of this, maybe some streams, because it can get kind of hard. Like even with this, it's a longer video for health, and that's just, I think, going to be the nature of this specific project, just because of what we're trying to build. So yeah, I'll leave it here, and thanks for watching. But until next time, see you, internet.